The galaxy had always been full of voices. Across the stars, thousands of worlds sent signals and messages to one another, weaving a net of sound and light. But one day, a new voice cut through the silence of Earth's sky. It was not a friendly greeting. It was not an invitation. It was a command. The Council of Worlds, a great assembly of alien powers, had spoken. They declared that Earth must surrender. Their message was simple. Earth would give up its skies, its seas, its people, and its freedom. In return, the Council promised mercy. If Earth resisted, it would face consequences no world could survive. On Earth, the message spread like fire. It flashed across screens, echoed in radios, and traveled through networks. In the cities, crowds gathered to listen. In villages, old radios hissed with the same words. Children asked their parents what surrender meant, and parents could not answer without fear in their hearts. At first, many thought it must be a mistake. Earth was young in space. Humans had only just begun to step beyond their home, sending ships to the Moon, Mars, and the outer planets. Compared to the great empires of the stars, Earth was small, unready, and fragile. Why would the Council focus on them? The truth was whispered in the halls of science. Humanity had grown fast, too fast. In less than a century, humans had gone, from fragile rockets to powerful engines. Their ships, though small, carried ideas the galaxy had never seen. The Council feared that if humanity was given time, it would rise beyond control. And so they chose to crush Earth before it could stand. Tall, world leaders met in hidden rooms. Some were afraid. They argued that humanity should surrender and live as servants rather than vanish as rebels. Others were angry. They said the Council had no right to take what did not belong to them. They demanded that Earth fight, no matter the cost. The debate was long and bitter. In those meetings, voices rose and hope fell. Yet while leaders argued, the people themselves began to speak. Workers in the cities said they would not hand over their homes. Farmers in the fields said they would not give up their land. Sailors at sea swore they would not lower their flags. Across Earth, from deserts to forests, from mountains to islands, the people answered the Council in one clear voice. They would not surrender. News stations reported these voices. Writers filled pages with defiance. Musicians sang new songs of unity. What had begun as fear slowly changed into resolve. For the first time in history, humanity was not divided by borders or nations. The threat from beyond the stars made them one people. But resolve alone was not enough. The Council's fleets were vast. Their ships could eclipse the sky of an entire world. Their weapons could melt metal with a single strike. Against such strength, Earth had little more than fragile weight, satellites and young starships. The question that lingered was simple. How could humanity fight against giants? The answer did not come from governments. It came from the hidden places of space. In the shadow of Saturn's rings, old mining stations turned silent. In the orbit of Mars, workshops glowed at all hours. Deep under the oceans, secret yards rumbled as machines hammered steel. The people of Earth, not waiting for leaders, began to prepare. They took old freighters and stripped them down. They turned cargo holds into armories. They took mining vessels and fitted them with armor. They rebuilt forgotten stations into strongholds. Piece by piece, ship by ship, something new was rising. It was not a fleet like the Council's, filled with shining warships built in grand yards. No, it was something different. A gathering of dark ships born from need and will. They were rough, patched, and scarred, yet they carried the heart of those who built them. Soon, this growing force would be given a name that struck fear even, before it struck in battle. The Black Armada. Back on Earth, children watched the sky and asked if they would be safe. Parents held them close and promised that they would see a tomorrow. Soldiers drilled, scientists planned, engineers worked without rest. Humanity did not know if it could win, but it knew it could not bow. Far above, in the deep halls of the Council, alien voices laughed. To them, Earth was nothing more than a spark waiting to be crushed. They believed the demand for surrender would end with Earth's silence. Yet even as they mocked, messages from hidden stations carried new words. Across space, Earth had heard the demand. But Earth's answer was not silence. Earth's answer was the Black Armada. The Council's demand echoed again and again across the skies of Earth. Every channel repeated the same message: surrender or lose all. The words were calm, spoken in the cold voice of a machine, but behind them was the weight of countless alien fleets. It was not simply a warning. It was a chain waiting to be locked around humanity's future. On Earth, the leaders gathered once more. They met in great halls, inside underground shelters, and in tall glass towers that looked over silent cities. They argued with heavy voices, each one carrying the fear of what might come. Some leaders said Earth had no chance. They explained that the Council's fleets numbered in the thousands. They spoke of weapons that could melt stone, shields that could swallow fire, and engines that could cross the stars in a single breath. Against such power, Earth was as weak as a leaf against a storm. To fight, they said, was madness. To surrender, they said, was survival. Others rose in anger. They struck the table with their hands and declared that no world had the right to demand Earth's chains. They spoke of history, of how humanity had once fought to be free on its own soil. They reminded the hall that Earth had always stood against storms, no matter how great. If they surrendered now, then all the struggles of the past would be lost. Better to resist and fall than to bow and live as shadows. The debate burned for days. Outside the halls, the people waited for an answer. In markets, in factories, and in schools, voices rose. Families sat around screens, watching leaders argue, yet their own hearts had already chosen. Surrender was not an option. Humanity had survived ice, fire, hunger, and endless wars. It would survive this too. On the second night of debate, something unexpected happened. In the city of Avon, a group of workers gathered in the central square. They lit torches and held banners painted with simple words, "We will not surrender." Their voices rose into the night, not in anger, but in strength. Soon other cities joined them. Farmers marched with wooden staffs, students sang in unison, and sailors raised their flags. The message spread faster than any order from a government. Across mountains and rivers, across deserts and oceans, the same words filled the air. We will not surrender. The leaders could no longer ignore it. The decision was no longer in their hands. The decision had been made by the people. At dawn, the leaders gave their answer to the council. The reply was short, carried on the same channels where the demand had once played. Earth would not surrender. Earth would remain free. The words shook the galaxy. In the council halls, alien voices roared with disbelief. To them, no young race had ever dared to defy such a command. Every new world that joined the stars had bowed before the Council's fleets. Yet humanity had chosen a different path. In quiet corners of the galaxy, however, not all voices mocked. Some alien scholars remembered old stories of their own worlds, stories of when they had once stood tall before being forced into the Council's rule. They whispered that perhaps humans carried something the galaxy had forgotten, a fire that would not bow. Back on Earth, the refusal brought not just pride, but also fear. The people knew what would follow. The Council would not ignore such defiance. The sky would soon be filled with ships from beyond the stars. And those ships would not come in peace. Yet fear did not stop the work. In hidden shipyards, the Black Armada continued to grow. Welders burned through metal day and night. Engineers slept beside machines that roared without pause. Every ship, no matter how old or patched, was fitted with armor, weapons, and hope. The Armada was not polished or grand. Its ships were dark, rough, and full of scars. But each one carried the will of humanity. Some ships bore the names of old heroes. Others carried the names of rivers, mountains, or forgotten towns. Each name was a promise that Earth would not fall without a fight. Children drew pictures of the Black Armada and pinned them to school walls. Songs were written about the ships rising in silence. Across every corner of Earth, people spoke of the Armada as if it were more than steel. It was a shield, a vow, and a dream. The Council's demand had sought to break humanity's spirit. Instead, it had awakened something greater, a unity the world had never known before. Nations that once argued now stood as one. Borders that once divided now seemed thin as shadows. Earth had refused, and in that refusal, it had found its strength. The Council's fleets began to move, their long shadows stretching across the stars. Scouts reported that they were gathering near the outer rim, ready to march toward Earth. To many, it looked like the end was certain. But in the quiet of space, where human ships rose one after another, the answer was already written. Humanity would meet the storm not with surrender, but with the Black Armada. And for the first time, the galaxy began to wonder if the Council's chains could truly hold this world called Earth. The refusal had been spoken, and the galaxy had heard it. Earth would not surrender. That single decision turned silence into movement. Across the world, people rose not just with words, but with action. In hidden corners, in quiet stations, and in empty fields, the work of resistance began. The Black Armada was still only a name, a dream that lived in whispers and songs. But dreams can become real when enough hands reach for them. Miners, builders, engineers, and sailors gave their skills. Old machines were pulled from storage, and forgotten blueprints were unrolled on dusty tables. Humanity was gathering, piece by piece. In the shadow of the moon, a half-broken station once used for experiments came alive again. Its halls glowed with new lights as workers filled its bays. Rusted walls were patched, and empty docks became busy with sparks. Here, freighters were stripped of cargo holds and rebuilt with armor. Here, engines were tested until they shook. The station. What had once been a forgotten outpost was now a forge of war. On Mars, colonies that had long dreamed of independence joined the effort. Martian engineers, known for their skill in making the most of little, began designing weapons from mining tools. A drill that once cut through stone was reshaped into a beam that could pierce metal. A lifter that carried ore became the arm of a ship. Every tool was turned into something new. Farther out, in the dark rings of Saturn, miners who had lived lonely lives among ice and stone offered their ships. They painted them black to hide in the shadows. They fitted them with crude weapons built from scrap. They knew their ships could never match the Council's grand fleets in beauty, but they could hide, strike, and vanish. They could turn the silence of space into an ally. The Black Armada was not built by soldiers alone. Scientists worked in secret labs, searching for ways to give Earth an edge. Some looked at human engines and found ways to push them faster. Others studied signals, hoping to confuse enemy sensors. Artists and writers gave their voices, filling the air with songs and stories that lifted the spirit of the people. Even children played their part, sending letters to the workers and drawing stars with black ships sailing across them. Everywhere the same words were spoken: for Earth, for freedom, for tomorrow. The leaders of Earth watched this gathering with both pride and worry. Pride because the world had never been so united. Worry because they knew the Council's fleets were vast and merciless. The Black Armada was rising, but it was still small compared to the storm that was coming. Still, the people pressed on. In the harbors of Earth, old sea vessels were stripped for metal. In the deserts, factories glowed through the night. In mountain caverns, hidden workshops hammered steel. Every corner of Earth was part of the work. Every hand carried the same purpose. Pilots were trained in secret. They learned to fly ships not as machines, but as extensions of their own will. They practiced in silence, weaving through asteroid fields, dodging debris and testing their limits. Many of them were young, born long after the first step on the moon. Yet each carried a fire in their heart that no training could give. Slowly, the Armada took shape. At first, it was a handful of ships, dark and rough. Then it grew to dozens. Then to hundreds. Each new ship carried scars from its birth. Some were patched with mismatched plates. Some bore marks from old work as freighters or miners. But when they stood together in the dark of space, they looked like a single tide. A tide that was black as night and strong as hope. The people began to speak of the Armada not as ships, but as a living thing. They said it was the spirit of Earth itself, rising to meet the stars. They said it was the shadow that would block the Council's light. The name Black Armada was no longer just a whisper, it was a banner. Yet even as Earth gathered, the Council did not remain silent. Scouts were seen at the edges of the system, watching, listening, measuring. Their reports would soon reach the great fleets that waited beyond. Humanity knew the time of testing was near. Still, there was no turning back. In the face of fear, humanity had chosen to act. In the shadow of giants, it had chosen to rise. The Black Armada was gathering, and though its ships were small, its heart was vast. In the stillness of space, one could almost believe the stars themselves leaned closer, watching as Earth prepared to stand against the galaxy. The spark the Council had feared was no longer small. It was becoming a flame, and soon that flame would meet the storm. The Black Armada was gathering in silence, but silence never lasts in space. The galaxy was watching. Far beyond Earth, in the tall chambers of the Council, reports arrived every day. Scouts sent images of human ships rising from the shadows. At first, the Council laughed. They called the ships toys and said no fleet built from freighters and miners could threaten them. Yet behind the laughter, some voices grew uneasy. They saw something that numbers could not explain. Humanity had been ordered to surrender, and, instead of breaking, it had grown stronger. That spirit, they whispered, could be more dangerous than any weapon. The Council sent more scouts to circle the solar system. These watchers crept near the edges of the planets, hiding in shadows, measuring signals and studying the strange new fleet. They noted the rough plates of the ships, the patchwork engines, and the crude weapons. They wrote that humans were desperate, but desperation itself was a warning, for desperation can turn weakness into strength. On Earth, people knew they were being watched. Pilots reported flashes of movement at the rim of the system. Signals flickered in strange rhythms, clearly not of human origin. Some ships were lost in quiet corners of space, never returning. The Council's eyes were everywhere, but so too were human eyes. For every scout that crept closer, the Black Armada sent shadows of its own. In the asteroid belts, small human, craft hid among rocks, watching the watchers. They studied the scouts in silence, learning their patterns, their signals, and their routes. They learned how long it took for a Council ship to send its message home. They learned how quickly they moved when chased. Every detail was written down, every observation stored, for humans understood that knowledge was power. The Council's watchers saw ships, but they could not see the spirit behind them. They did not see the families working day and night to build more. They did not hear the songs sung in the cities. They did not feel the unity that had grown in the hearts of the people. The watchers looked at steel and engines, but they missed the flame inside. Still, the watchers were not the only ones. Far from the Council, in hidden places of the galaxy, other eyes turned toward Earth. Traders, smugglers, and wanderers carried tales of the Black Armada. Some laughed, calling it a fleet of shadows. Others spoke with quiet respect, saying no young race had ever stood so boldly. Among the forgotten and the free, whispers began that perhaps Earth's stand was not just for itself, but for every world. that had once lost its voice. Back on Earth, the knowledge of being watched did not break the spirit of the people. It sharpened it. Engineers tightened their work. Pilots practiced harder. Commanders taught crews how to move in silence, how to strike unseen, and how to vanish before the enemy could answer. The Black Armada was not built to fight like the Council. It was built to fight like humans. Ships were painted darker, not for beauty but for survival. Weapons were hidden in strange places, waiting to surprise. Even communication was reshaped. Instead of sending strong signals that could be tracked, the Armada used faint whispers, bouncing them across asteroids and moons. The Watchers learned less and less, while the Armada learned more and more. The Council grew impatient. Some demanded to strike at once and end the matter before the humans grew stronger. Others argued that waiting was wiser, for the humans could not hope to match the endless fleets of the Council. Time, they said, would crush Earth without a single battle. In their pride, they did not see that time was not crushing humanity. Time was feeding it. In the halls of Earth's hidden stations, the first commanders of the Armada met. They were not generals of old empires. They were miners, sailors, traders, and explorers. Yet each carried the same fire. They shared their knowledge of the Watchers, drew maps of the scouts' paths, and planned not just to defend, but to strike. Humanity was learning the art of patience, and patience would become a weapon. At night, when the skies were clear, people on Earth looked up and wondered if the Watchers were staring back. Some felt fear, but more felt pride. For if the galaxy was watching, then let it watch. Let it see that Earth would not bend. The Council believed its Watchers controlled the story, but slowly the story was slipping from their hands. The Black Armada was not hiding. It was preparing. And the more the galaxy watched, the more it began to wonder. Could it be that this small world, so young among the stars, was about to teach the giants a lesson they had forgotten? The Watchers sent their final reports. Ships were multiplying. Signals were changing. Movements were strange, too strange to explain. The Council studied the words but found no clear answers. The humans were not acting as expected. And in that, confusion lay the first seeds of fear. The galaxy was watching, and soon it would see not just preparation, but defiance in full. The day the Council's fleet arrived, the sky over Earth was clear. On the surface, people went about their work, building, training, and preparing. But in the dark reaches above, massive ships moved with silent menace. Their size was greater than anything humanity had seen. Their hulls gleamed like frozen stars, and their engines hummed with power beyond imagination. The Black Armada waited in the shadow of asteroids and moons. Each ship was small compared to the Council's giants, but each carried the determination of Earth itself. Pilots tightened their harnesses and watched the distant shapes approach. They had trained for this day, yet nothing could fully prepare them for the sight of the enemy. Commanders gave their orders calmly. They spoke not of fear, but of strategy. The Armada would not meet the fleet head-on. That was impossible. Instead, they would use speed, stealth, and cunning. Each human ship would strike where the Council least expected, vanish, and strike again. The first clash began in the outer asteroid belt. Scouts from the Council detected movement and sent a wave of attack ships. The humans waited until the moment was right. Then, in sudden bursts of light, the Black Armada struck. Small fighters darted from behind rocks, firing beams that pierced shields designed to repel larger fleets. Explosions scattered fragments across the void, but no human ship lingered. They vanished into darkness as quickly as they appeared. The Council's commanders were shocked. They had expected humans to be weak, desperate, and fearful. Instead, the Armada was swift, precise, and unafraid. The Council sent reinforcements, but each wave met the same resistance. Humans had learned to use the space around them as a weapon. Every rock, every moon, every shadow became a shield. On Earth, people watched the reports from orbit. Families gathered around screens, their eyes wide with fear and pride. Engineers and scientists adjusted weapons in real time, sending guidance to pilots who moved like shadows. Students cheered as messages arrived from fighters. Target eliminated, returning to position. Every victory was small, but every victory was a spark. The Council's fleet regrouped. Larger ships advanced, firing beams that could vaporize mountains. The humans felt the heat of each strike, yet they moved like water, avoiding the brunt of the attacks. Commanders had prepared traps. Mines floated in orbit, invisible until ships passed too close. Hidden turrets on moons fired suddenly, tearing through shields. The first major ship of the Council exploded in a storm of fire, leaving the rest of the fleet unsettled. Pilots of the Black Armada began to understand something important. This battle was not just about ships, it was about thinking differently. The Council expected power to dominate, size to intimidate, and fleets to crush. Humans relied on mind and courage, speed and planning. That difference was their strength. Still, the battle was dangerous. Some ships were lost. Young pilots, some only recently trained, disappeared into the black of space. But every loss was counted, every mistake studied. The Black Armada did not despair. Every fallen ship became a lesson for the next attack. The Council grew angry. They could not understand how humans could fight like this. Every plan they made was anticipated. Every attack they sent met with clever countermeasures. Frustration spread among their commanders. They ordered more fire, larger beams, and heavier ships. Yet each new strategy only revealed the humans' creativity. In the midst of battle, one human pilot, named Ryan, spotted a massive cruiser moving to flank their formation. He took his small fighter and dove between asteroids, approaching unnoticed. With careful precision, he fired the weapons he had helped build. The cruiser shuddered, alarms screaming, and then it was gone in a flash of fire. The other pilots followed his lead, striking at targets the Council thought untouchable. By the time the first day ended, the Council's fleet had suffered damage they could not ignore. Their pride was wounded. Their assumption that humanity was weak had been proven wrong. They withdrew temporarily to reassess, leaving the humans in control of the outer belt. On Earth, celebrations were quiet but full of relief. The first clash had been won not by numbers, but by courage and strategy. Humanity had shown that even the smallest ships could make a difference if guided by the right mind. People cheered engineers, pilots, and commanders alike. For the first time, the phrase Black Armada carried real meaning, not just hope. As night fell on Earth, the stars above were calm once more. But everyone knew this was only the beginning. The Council would return, larger and stronger. The Black Armada would need to grow, adapt, and fight again, and deep in the hearts of every human. Watching the sky, one thought was clear: Earth would not surrender. The first clash had ended, but the war had only begun. The Council's fleet had retreated, but it did not leave quietly. From beyond the asteroid belt, enormous ships moved into position, circling the solar system like silent predators. Satellites detected their arrival, and people across Earth felt the weight of their presence. The Black Armada had fought bravely, but now the stakes were higher. This was no longer a test. This was a siege. Commanders on Earth watched the movement with sharp eyes. Every approach, every formation was studied. They had learned from the first clash that the Council relied on size and strength. Humanity relied on speed, cunning, and careful planning. If the Council expected fear, they would be disappointed. The cities grew quiet as emergency protocols were activated. Factories worked through the night, producing supplies and weapons. Shipyards buzzed as fighters were repaired and new ships prepared. Even the smallest vessels were modified to hold more firepower. Civilians contributed in small ways, from relaying messages to transporting essential materials. Every hand mattered. From orbit, the Black Armada gathered. The fleet had grown since the first clash, but it was still smaller than the Council's forces. Commanders debated strategy, knowing that a direct confrontation would be disastrous. Instead, they planned a network of defenses across space and on planets. Satellites were armed with lasers, asteroid fields were rigged with mines, and decoy ships were positioned to mislead the enemy. The Armada was becoming not just a fleet, but a living network of defense. The first strike came at the outer planets. The Council's ships fired massive beams, breaking through defenses and leaving craters on moons and asteroids. The humans responded with precise attacks from hidden positions. Fighters darted through debris, striking at weak points, then vanishing before retaliation. Each engagement was short but intense, a dance of shadows and light. On Earth, people watched the reports with tense excitement. Families held hands as they saw young pilots, barely out of training, maneuver through deadly fire. Engineers cheered as their designs worked flawlessly. Scientists monitored shields and weapons, adjusting. In real time, everyone played a part in the defense, from the highest commanders to the youngest children sending encouraging messages to the crews. The Council was growing frustrated. Their ships were large and powerful, but their commanders did not understand the human mind. Every attack they planned was countered in unexpected ways. The Black Armada had learned to anticipate patterns, predict movements, and use the environment. Asteroid belts, magnetic fields, and shadows became allies. The Council had firepower, but humanity had imagination. In the midst of battle, Commander Sira led a daring mission. She piloted her ship through a dense field of debris, approaching a Council cruiser from below. Her weapons were small compared to the enemy's, but her aim was perfect. She fired repeatedly, hitting engines and causing confusion. Other fighters followed, striking the cruiser's weak points. By the time the enemy realized the attack, the cruiser had been disabled and drifted harmlessly into space. Elsewhere, young pilots practiced ambush tactics. They set traps in asteroid tunnels, firing torpedoes from hidden angles. They guided Council ships into minefields and decoy formations. Each success boosted morale and demonstrated that size alone could not win a war. Even as the Black Armada scored victories, the cost was visible. Ships were lost, and brave pilots did not return. Earth's population mourned quietly, knowing that every sacrifice made the Armada stronger. Lessons were learned from each loss. Strategies improved. Weapons were upgraded and crews adapted. Humanity's resilience grew with every challenge. The Council realized that Earth would not surrender and that defiance was stronger than they had expected. They began to bring in reinforcements, larger fleets from distant systems. Still, the humans did not panic. They strengthened their defenses, set new traps, and continued to train more pilots. Earth itself became a fortress, not just in orbit, but across every planet and moon in the system. At night, the sky above Earth glowed with distant flashes from the ongoing battles. Citizens watched in awe, fear, and pride. They saw the shadows of the Black Armada strike and vanish. They understood that though the war was far from over, humanity had already changed the course of the conflict. The galaxy had demanded surrender, but Earth had chosen courage. The siege had begun, and the future remained uncertain. Yet one truth was clear. The Black Armada was no longer a dream. It was a shield, a sword, and a symbol of human determination. The shadows over Earth carried not only danger but hope, and the people knew that together they could face whatever the galaxy sent. In the cold silence of space, both fleets prepared for the next engagement. The Black Armada waited, hidden, but ready. The Council watched, frustrated but determined. Humanity and the galaxy were locked in a struggle that would decide more than just Earth's fate. It would define the strength of a people who refused to bow. The Council's fleet had returned in full force. Massive ships blotted out stars as they approached the solar system. Their engines glowed like distant suns, and weapons hummed with a deadly rhythm. The galaxy had demanded Earth's surrender, but the Black Armada was ready. Humanity would not yield. Commanders on Earth gathered in the central control room. Every ship, every station, and every weapon was in position. The Black Armada was smaller, but it was faster, smarter, and united. Pilots ran last-minute checks. Engineers tested weapons, and scientists adjusted shields. Everyone knew this was the moment that would decide the future. The Council sent a warning first. Their massive ships broadcast a message across space. Surrender now, and destruction will be avoided. Humanity's answer was silent. There was no surrender. Instead, the Black Armada launched its first wave. Fighters moved like shadows through asteroid belts. They darted between moons and space debris, striking targets before disappearing. Torpedoes hit the hulls of the Council's ships, lasers cut through shields, and hidden turrets fired from the shadows. Each attack was precise, calculated, and unexpected. The Council unleashed its full power. Huge beams of energy tore through the void, destroying smaller vessels. Explosions lit the sky as ships collided, shields failed, and debris scattered. The Black Armada had planned for this, and every loss was met with adaptation. Pilots learned, commanders adjusted, and new strategies emerged in real time. On Earth, people watched with tense excitement. Citizens cheered for victories, and whispered prayers went out for those who did not return. Each human who fought among the stars carried the hopes of the entire planet. Children, families, and workers understood that every small action contributed to the defense. Commander Sira led a daring strike against the largest cruiser in the Council's fleet. With a small team of fighters, she navigated a field of spinning asteroids, closing in from an angle the enemy did not expect. They fired in perfect sequence, striking engines, weapon ports, and shield generators. The cruiser erupted in fire, a massive explosion lighting up the darkness. Other human pilots followed, targeting weak points in the enemy lines. The battle was chaotic and intense. Ships moved at incredible speeds, weaving between debris and fire. Communications were full of updates, warnings, and encouragement. The Black Armada was not just fighting, it was alive. It moved like a single mind, reacting to every threat, exploiting every opportunity. The Council's fleet began to falter. Their massive ships could destroy many things at once, but they could not match the creativity and speed of humanity. The smaller, agile ships of the Black Armada outmaneuvered them, striking repeatedly where they were weakest. Commanders of The Council realized too late that Earth's people had grown stronger since the first clash. Even as the battle raged, the Black Armada had a plan for the heart of the Council's forces. Hidden among the debris of the asteroid belt, human engineers had built a network of explosive traps and decoys. As the enemy advanced, they were funneled into a deadly corridor. Torpedoes struck from every angle, mines exploded in sequence, and the remaining fighters attacked from the shadows. One by one, the Council's ships fell, unable to escape the well-prepared ambush. By the time the first major wave ended, the Council had lost nearly half its fleet. Silence spread across space for a brief moment. The Black Armada was battered, but victorious. Humanity had faced the mightiest force in the galaxy, and had not only survived but struck back with strength and courage. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet but heartfelt. Families hugged, tears of relief and pride were shed, and messages of congratulations flowed from orbit to the surface. Humanity had proven that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the greatest enemy. The Council retreated beyond the outer systems, leaving the solar system under human control. Messages from distant worlds began to arrive, some curious, some admiring. The story of Earth's stand traveled quickly. Other civilizations whispered about the bravery of a young planet that refused to bow. The Black Armada had become a symbol not just of resistance, but of possibility. Commander Sira looked out from her ship at the remnants of the battle. The stars seemed brighter now, and the silence was filled with hope. The war was not over, and challenges would continue. But humanity had learned a powerful truth. No fleet, no matter how massive, could break the spirit of a people united. The Black Armada had risen from miners, engineers, and ordinary citizens. It had grown from hope and courage, proving that even against overwhelming odds, Earth would never surrender. The galaxy had demanded obedience, but humanity had answered with defiance, brilliance, and strength. And so, as the final fires of battle faded into the dark of space, the people of Earth looked toward the stars with pride. The Black Armada had not only protected their home, it had shown the galaxy that humanity was ready to stand, fight, and thrive among the stars. The story of Earth's resistance had begun, and it would be remembered for generations.